So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. And I'm delighted today to be joined by James again. James was on last week, and we decided we'd invite him back because he had a sterling debut. And I wanted to really talk to him about the massive, big, huge breaking news. Well, we're going to talk about midfield, but there's massive, big, huge, unbelievably breaking news at the moment. And that is that Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's court case. No, absolutely not. You're in the wrong place. I might actually tag Johnny Depp and Amber Heard in the actual podcast notes in a moment, so you can drive to listen. But James, how are you getting on?
Yeah, not too bad. You?
I'm doing great. But no, the big news, I suppose, out of Villa Park today, and it has slightly sidetracked and hijacked our podcast tonight, is that Michael Beale has I think, well, we'll talk about what I think in a moment, but he has taken up the position as manager / head coach of QPR. Yet to be seen whether it's going to be a massive derailment of the project with regards to Steven Gerrard, but I'd be interested to see what your views on it are, James, and what you feel.
I think obviously it is a bit of a disappointment, but I tweeted about this the other day. It's come at a better time than when we lost Richard O'Kelly and JT last season. Gives us a lot of time to look for the right man. I mean, ideally we get it wrapped up quite quick, but we don't rush it at the same time. We ideally need someone that's obviously the same wavelength as Stevie G, someone that's going to be comfortable around him, comfortable around the players, brings out the best in them. But yeah, it's not the ideal start, but I don't think it's as it's been blown out of proportion a little bit, I think, on some social media sites. But yeah, we see what comes of it now. I'm not really up to date on assistant coaches or anything. It's not the same as getting players and stuff. Obviously, I liked your shout. Was it Mike Garrity earlier from Blackpool? Yeah, we'll see what comes of it.
Yeah, we'll see what comes of that. And I'm going to be really honest. We were doing a podcast last night and someone dropped it into the comments saying, guys, keep an eye out for Mike Garrity. And it's somebody who just appears in a puff of smoke every so often in our comments and goes, lads, this person isn't playing today. 10 minutes before the team sheet is announced and whatever. And I'm just kind of going, okay, when this person speaks, sometimes all the time I listen, and I don't know who they are, so I couldn't tag them on Twitter or anything like that to let them know. But I suppose a lot of, and we'll talk about the Mike Garrity situation in a moment because I did go in and look at it afterwards. But I think with regards to the McBeal thing, look, if anybody in that situation, if you're going to back yourself, if you're 41 years of age and people have been blowing smoke at you for years about how good of a coach you are, and you get an opportunity to coach a team in the championship, albeit mid-table team, their squad needs work, it needs coaching, but if you get that opportunity to do it, you're going to have to take it. And I think Steven Gerrard probably always knew that deep down, that something like that was going to happen. So I think contingency is this team's is this ownership's middle name at the moment. Whether you like it or not, I think the contingency of selling Jack Grealish last year was to bring in the 3 players that they brought in. And while it hasn't really come to fruition yet, they still had a plan. So they weren't caught flat-footed. Exactly. And I think something like that will happen here as well. But it's an interesting. I have to admire this man's perseverance. John Gameson, watching Scotland in the pub and listening to the podcast. I have to. Yeah, I know Scotland are playing poorly, but God, I didn't know who. I didn't know they were playing that poorly that you wanted to us on.
Got it on in the background because I was watching it before we came on, and they look like they've got no bite in them tonight. Ukraine look much better, and then McGinn missed an absolute sitter.
I saw it. Yeah, I saw the header. I had the finalissima on actually between Argentina and Italy because I just love Guido Rodriguez, who plays for Argentina, and I could just watch him kick people up and down the field all day long, and it just reminds me. It goes, yeah, when you used to play, you used to like to drop back in there and just boot
Yeah.
people up and down the field.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the dark arts of football at times.
Yeah, it resonates
Sign
with me.
him, Johan Langer. Sign him. Get him in.
Yeah, get it done. Get him in.
But on the McBeal piece, you mentioned there that like Twitter is a blast with it. That this is gonna like there seems to be. He's 6 months in the role, ish, and no, he's more. He's probably 8 months in the role or whatever. But it's almost like a sense of mourning about it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's wrong because he's a good coach, but it's like there are other guys out there.
Yeah.
There are other people out there who can come in and do a job.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's one of those. Someone tweeted earlier, like when Klopp lost, forget his name now, the last assistant coach that he had, and there was a bit of an outcry there saying, what's he going to do now? And then they brought in Pep Linders, and arguably they're much better. It's one of those, isn't it? You just never know what's going to happen. We could bring someone in that's even better. Because, I mean, I know Michael Beale is really highly rated across the board by a lot of people. But, it doesn't mean that we can't get someone better. We've got plenty of time to do it. So, yeah, it's time will tell, really.
Oh, there's my dog doesn't approve of it either. I don't know if anyone could hear it. Seko Borvak, I think the man's name was the Borvak.
Yes,
Borvak,
that's the one. Yeah,
was the assistant manager. Yeah, he went off to Dynamo Moscow. Maybe he's free. Maybe he doesn't have much to do now that the Russian league that there's potential for Russian teams to be.
Get Stevie on the blower.
Yeah, get him on the blower. Exactly. See what happens. But no, look, I think that there's always going to be a retooling in this aspect, and I think you always kind of have to, when you have an assistant manager that is so highly thought of, even when you've got coaches that are so highly thought of, they're going to be picked up by other teams. They're going to be picked up by international teams specifically. Like realistically, if you've got a really, really good like Tom Culshaw is another guy who's known to be a really good technical coach. When we talk about that, he's a skills coach. He's a positional coach. He did set pieces at Rangers. And those kind of guys are the guys who add that extra bit when you're in a Premier League team. But for an international team, to get those guys in there to be able to spend a week with a team installing stuff in short bursts from a technical point of view over a week, they're invaluable. So you have to always be ready for those types of coaches if you do have a big coaching staff specifically to leave your club, because the bigger your coaching staff, the easier it is to pluck someone from the mid-rung of your staff and pop them in there. Now, obviously, this guy is the top rung of our staff, as being that he's the assistant manager, or he was the head coach, whatever way you want to call it, and he's been taken to have the top job. So, but there are going to be people out there, and we spoke about Mike Garrity. I can't name too many. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know coaches, but like Mike Garrity was something that was mentioned last night, should I say? And I suppose like his coaching career is very much Liverpool based, with Neil Critchley, who's gone on to play with Blackpool. He did coach actually under McBeal. He was assistant to McBeal for a couple of years as well. Yeah. And then he went to China. And I just think that there's something unbelievably cool about even only having 13 games and a couple of months, but under Marcello Lippi, one of the best to ever manage. It's just, I think that's pretty amazing. And if you think about it, his career is kind of like, he's gone to kind of mad places like that. Like, he's gone over and he was assistant manager of China, and he was also head of youth development at Molde. And when you look back at what you call him, McBeal's career as well, he went off to South America. He went off to flung places. So very serendipitous kind of situations.
That's where he kind of got into. He fell in love with the coaching, wasn't it, in South America? Was it a kids' school that he started up? It wasn't so popular at first, and then started taking classes. And I think he said something like, "Seeing them come out happy is what makes it worthwhile." And then I think obviously he just moved on from that. Or something. Futsal, yeah.
And then he got a gig then with Sao Paulo under Rodrigo Cerny, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, assistant manager there. Yeah, I think he took charge of one of the games, didn't he, when he was over there as well? I think when, he had to because of some sort of circumstances. And I think he tweeted about that not long ago, and he said it was a great experience, and it's probably been in his mind, hasn't it? Really, when you think about it, that sort of experience, and as you say, someone that's been told that often that he's one to watch in coaching. He's probably thought, some point soon I want to have a go myself.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. Look, sometimes like it's always a good manager will allow his staff to move on, because you don't want to stand in their way, because then it'll be difficult to get staff in future, because you don't want to be known as that guy, that guy that stands in people's way. And obviously, look, Stephen Gerrard has been nothing but effusive in his praise of McBeal, and like he knows what side his bread is buttered on, I suppose, or he knew what side his bread is buttered on when he was with Stephen Gerrard. He put out a beautiful post to say, thank you for 4 years of friendship and everything, that he's a real good guy, that he's a real good manager, and he built up a real good culture within the coaching staff. And I thought that was a nice, classy way to leave the relationship as well. Although he had a Liverpool and a Rangers photo underneath, no Villa photo. So
yeah,
no, you lose points for that, Mick.
I think there might, because he said something about the relationships he'd built in his time. I don't know if I saw it wrong, but I think there might have been a picture of him with Aaron Danks.
Maybe so.
I think
so.
That's another person that I was thinking of, because obviously we're obviously talking about who we might look at. He might promote from within and then add someone in at a lower level inside the club. But
I'd be surprised.
I think Danks is more of he's an attacking coach, isn't he? I think he works on attacking patterns of play with the players, so be a bit of a step up. But I mean, he's highly regarded as well. Just one of those, as you say. It would be surprising. I've just seen it bandied around a bit.
I'd be surprised if we keep Aaron Danks kind of separate from him, but I'd be surprised if it was a promotion from within. Because there is a marriage of old and new staff there at the moment. I think if anything, we might see more coaches move on.
Yeah,
and then a full kind of backroom cabinet of Stephen Gerrard meant to come in. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's why I just don't think they'll promote from within. Ronan put in a comment here. Don't forget about Gary Mack. Gary Mack did the role before under Julia, and I think more so that it's been established that Gary Mack is he's really the arm around the shoulder guy, the guy who can go over and sit in between the players in the dressing room. He's not the pull out the tactics board and lay out the cones guy on the field. And that's why I also think that they're not going to promote from within, because you can see that when you even hear about like Tom Culshaw has come up about, will he not just promote him because of the great relationship that they have, but he might be very good at that, at setting out a training session. He might be really good at his specialization pieces. I don't really know a whole pile about Aaron Danks. I did speak to the training ground guru guys on him before, not on the podcast, from what I can remember. And I'm going to be really honest, I must go back and check, because sometimes after I do podcasts with people, maybe I'm chatting with them in the foyer beforehand or afterwards, and there's some nuggets come out and I write it down. And I do have a jotter here where I've got little notes. I might go back and just see if I can find anything that was said on Danks, but he is, as you said, is highly thought of. And he was only at Anderlecht for 3 months or 4 months, if I remember rightly, with Vincent Kompany. So, you know, he moved on from Anderlecht very, very quickly. So a lot of people are kind of talking as well about, we wouldn't be able to get this guy because we wouldn't be able to get X coach because he's just gone here. But I think coaches are more fluid in how they can move around. And to be honest with you, money talks.
It does, yeah. I mean, I know it's not exactly been a really short time, but obviously he's been with Gerrard for quite a while. But Bill's only been here for, as you say, 8-ish months. When bigger gigs or more appealing gigs come along, they're not going to hold back from it if it's helping progress their own career. You know, just like footballers, really. I mean, obviously they have a bit more longevity in where they stay at clubs, but yeah, as you say, it's one of them.
Another coach that somebody mentioned to me was sorry there, guys, my computer is just about to shut down for there's something popping up here saying warning, enter your password, and I'm going, don't shut down in the middle of the podcast. But sorry, yes, so another name that somebody shouted at me on Twitter today, and I think it's a really interesting name, and it's potentially somebody that could make the switch over, albeit that he is just gone back to Chelsea again. But Anthony Barry is so he's been coach with Belgian national team, and he's first team coach at Chelsea. He was with Ireland, with the Republic of Ireland as well. He does tend to job hop an awful lot, and that's why I'm kind of thinking that this is kind of somebody that could come in and it could do the could move. He was originally he was assistant to Paul Cook at Wigan, so he has been an assistant manager. Joined Chelsea as first team coach in 2020, and then in 2021 he left and he joined the Republic of Ireland coaching team. And he did do some work with Chelsea still, if my memory serves me right. And then he left Ireland to join Belgium, so he's hopped around a bit in the last 2 years. And also, I'm not fully convinced that Thomas Tuchel is going to be there for the long haul with Chelsea. And to be honest with you, I think Thomas Tuchel could decide to up sticks mid-season next season and just leave. He's that kind of guy, Thomas Tuchel,
you don't know with their situation as well. I think what happens when new ownerships come in. Yeah, as good as a manager as he is, they might just not see the same vision as him, how they want to play, how they want to work. They might not get on. It's one of those. You never know in football. So, as you say, you just have to see.
Exactly. Well, we're going to park the coach talk there for a moment because I'm very quickly getting out of my depth with names of coaches and things like that. It's getting very conspiratorial and speculatory here at the moment. And I always feel like I'm dancing in glass slippers when it starts to get hypothetical situations or stuff that is based not like the names we've thrown out here. I have no factual basis behind them whatsoever. So these are just us spitting things at the wall and hoping that one of them sticks. So I do get very, very anxious when we start talking those kind of things. So let's kind of talk a small bit more about something else that happened at Aston Villa today. We got some bad news in McBeal was leaving, but then almost hot in the heels, we got some good news that it's over the line, and we got to see our new £26 million man, our new Brazilian centre half in the Villa shirt. Maybe not on the pitch, but in the Villa shirt, in the photographs, and a proper press announcement that we have reached an agreement and signed Diego Carlos. Thoughts on that, James? Because I don't think I've ever gotten your thoughts on that signing it.
I'm really excited about it. I'm excited more to see how we use him because he's a right-footed centre back, tends to play on the left, but he can play on the right. I think he played on the right at Nantes.
He did.
He's very combative. He's good on the ball. He's got recovery pace, all things that you want in a high defensive line, which I think that we might be working towards. I think it's one of those now as well. We've got to see if we're linked or bring in another centre-back and what sort of sided centre-back it is. I think that'll point towards how we use them. But I think the whole deal in general has been, it's a great one for Carlos. 26 million. I know he's 29, but he was quoted a lot more than that in January, I think. I'm really excited to see him.
Yeah. I am too. I'm really excited to see him. I'm excited that we've got final confirmation now because, sometimes those deals are done, but they may not be done. And it's very rare that you see one, specifically when you see big names like Fabrizio Romano and like they tweet, listen, this is a done deal. It's absolutely 100% signed. I think it's very seldom that stuff like that happens. I think with Fabrizio that the only one I could ever remember that ever went backwards on it was the Messi deal, but that caught everybody by surprise, considering it was a case that Messi was going to sign the deal, and all of a sudden the Barcelona turned around and said, guys, you can't, because you can't financially sign this deal. It's not within the rules. So once somebody says like that, says it, it's probably gospel. So I'm delighted to see it, and I think. While I don't disagree with when you talk about right and left-sided centre-backs, I think the fact he can play both and that we do already have two right-sided centre-backs, it would make sense that we would have a second left-sided centre-back. Yeah. I think that I think it's going to be Carlos and Mings next season. I don't think we're changing Mings at all. To change our two centre-backs is a massive undertaking. It's a huge undertaking. And we've no bloody coach to implement implementing at the moment either. So huge undertaking. And then to get them to line up with a brand new number 6 holding midfielder, I think it might be a bridge too far to change those three players.
Yeah, I'd be happy to see Carlos start on the right. I think especially with Kamara in there, I presume we'll be building as a back three. But Kamara's got that intuitiveness where he can cover behind the two centre backs. So any sort of mistakes that we might see from a high line or aggressive pressing, he's someone that can sweep up. So don't worry me too much about the aggressive sort of play that we might see. Mings, I think he will go up a level next to Carlos. I think they'll bounce off each other, leadership-wise, ability-wise. I think it's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm enticed by it as well. PSK, the man who mentioned Garrity on the podcast last night, and delighted to see you're back in here again. He mentions that Garrity as an assistant has legs, and that Olsen to be confirmed by the weekend. And that there was another Maxence Lacroix rumor today. We did a show on Maxence Lacroix, and I fell. I'm not going to say I fell in love with him, but I really got a deep liking for just a different type of defender, and a defender that kind of reminds me a small bit of the lad Romero that Spurs picked up.
Yeah.
You know, aggressive as all hell, and he's going to ask questions after he, goes straight through you. You know, and Lacroix is like that as well. So maybe, and he's a right-sided centre back. So maybe when he comes in, that answers a couple more questions for us as well. But we already have two right-sided centre backs. So what happens in that instance, I don't know. But big money, I think they're looking for him, about 30 million.
Yeah,
and that'd be an interesting one. Do you know much about him?
I've seen bits, not a lot, I'll confess. His data looks good, but mainly the eye test, he passes it for me. He's got another player that's got immense recovery pace. He's so quick. But he's really good at progressing the ball as well. On the ball, he's always looking forward, so that's a good sign.
Yeah. Yeah, we'd see if there's something in that. That would be an interesting one. Be a lot of money to spend on two centre halves. You're talking the ones of 30 million in that one, 30, 35. To spend 61 million on two new centre halves. There is, to me, I know it doesn't sound like massive money in the greater scheme of things when you see that Harry Maguire went for 80 million, but to integrate two of those at the same time, I think, put it this way, if I was offered the coaching job at Aston Villa in the morning, I'd turn it down on the basis of having to integrate two centre halves and a defensive midfielder into the system in one off season. That would just be me.
I'd have hot sweats thinking about
that. Absolutely. Here's a shout for assistant manager. Let's just go back to assistant manager for a moment. Hermann Jurland, that would be a real statement. Mr. Bayern Munich himself, Hermann Jurland. And thanks for that, KFWH. Like, Hermann Jurland is literally, that would be saying something. I would imagine, and I know he's in and out, whenever they're stuck, they get him to come back in as assistant manager, and it's like he retires once every 6 months and comes back again. But I would imagine if he set foot outside of Germany that he might turn to dust or something. He's also 67 years of age. But he put it this way. There'll be no one saying there'll be no one ringing up saying I can't get to training today because my gate is locked. I've locked myself into my gate. I can guarantee you Hermann Jurland will be out there in 2 seconds flat and he'd go through that gate to open it. So that would be an interesting one. This is also one from John Steele. This is another really interesting point, and I know I'm going backwards to kind of go forwards here, and we're 23 minutes in and we haven't spoken about midfield yet. But John Steele mentioned something as well, and it is topical towards Aston Villa. The Martin O'Neill, his managerial career went downhill after John Robertson retired, and that is really interesting because it just did go downhill. And he managed at Irish level, and he had Roy Keane with him, if memory serves me right, and so on. And John Robertson was the guy who did the donkey work for him on the field, So, but then again, that's anecdotal evidence. That happened to him, may not happen to Steven Gerrard. They were also 25 years doing it together. Yeah. Whereas Gerrard is probably the bones of, Jesus, if we were to put it together, 35 months. Together.
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? I think we're going to see what Gerrard is made of. I don't think it's so much off a cliff as what people might expect, but we're going to see how he adapts to different coaches. A lot of the best managers went through different coaches. Fergie went through, something like 7 in his time at United, and he lost Brian Kidd and he was fine. It is about how you adapt, but I don't think we can call it right now. So it's a slight worry, but it's also you could be excited that someone else better comes in at the same time. So I sort of temper my disappointment at the moment.
And I think that's a fair thing to do. Look, there's a lot to be written here, and we can panic now and be reactionary, I suppose, to Michael Beale going. But next thing, as I say, tomorrow morning we could have Herman Gerland in here, or we could have someone with a massive record of success in. You just don't know, because Stephen Gerrard is like we just don't know what he's going to be able to pull out of the woodwork with regards to this one. People might want to come and work for him that we never would consider, and maybe want to leave a role with another club. Who knows? I don't, as I say, once again, we're in the realm of hypothetical once more, and I have the glass slippers on, and I'm afraid that I'm going to break them here. So it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. Right. So we're going to cut the transfer talk there for a moment. We're also going to cut the coaching talk, and I'm actually going to talk to you 25 minutes in about what I actually bloody got you on the podcast to talk about in the first thing, James. So we're still doing our season review, and this is part 2 of our 3-part season review. Actually, we might even do a 4th one. We might even do a whole what did Stephen Gerrard and Dean Smith bring to the table review, but we'll see. That one is yet to be written. But today we're going to talk about the midfielders. For me, a much maligned position, a position that got a ton of blame, rightly and wrongly, I think, over the course of the season. Ronnie Murphy, who usually comes on the podcast and comments from time to time. Good to see you if you are listening, Ronnie. We love you. I don't have any stat sheets for you. You'll be delighted to know, because Ronnie don't like the stat sheets, unfortunately. So I don't have them today, and it's not. It's just because I didn't get to them, to be honest. I didn't get to do them. But our midfield is an area I think that I'd like to get your opinion on, because to be honest with you, I'm a bit sick of talking about the midfield after the season that they've had.
Yeah, it's fun. I think it is the position that's been, I think, looked at so much this season. I think it has been a bit unbalanced. We were screaming out for a specialist 6 for a long time. Finally got one now, obviously, but we had Nakamba. He has limitations. He's great at winning the ball back, moving it on, maybe sideways, not quite carrying it forwards and progressing it forwards passing wise. And then obviously we lost him. And it's just been one of those, I think there's been some blame on the players, some blame on the coaching, and I think it's in between at times. It's hard when a new set of staff come in, implement a new vision, a new blueprint for players to adapt to it and for the coaches to implement it. I think it screams out that it probably was one of our weakest positions, where straight away we get Kamara over the line after the transfer window, after the end of the season, and we're still looking at another midfielder. So I think, as you said, rightly and wrongly, got a lot of criticism. Especially, I do feel sorry for Douglas Luiz, especially. I think he's another player that can be inconsistent, but he's been played at a position for such a long time. When he played in that 8th position against, was it Liverpool? And he shone. It was one of those when you say, in City, that was one of his best games of the season as well. I think he created something like 6 chances that game, didn't he? Like top chance creator that game. So we have the frustrating thing is we have a lot of talent in midfield. It's just not clicked, and I think a lot of it comes down to shape. It has been very frustrating to watch.
I agree. I think my biggest problem with our midfield this year is it's very samey. Yeah. It's very, very samey. In the aspect whereby, somebody like, this is okay. I'm just gonna do something there. It's very samey from the point of view that Jacob Ramsey comes in, and Jacob Ramsey immediately becomes our only ball carrying midfielder. Everybody else was a retreat and contain type midfielder, and whether they wanted to be that way or not, everybody just morphed into that player. You saw Morgan Sanson was busy like McGinn, but essentially we didn't see a whole pile of McGinn going forward at all this season. When we did, he took shots from 80 yards, and now I don't mind that in a lot of aspects. And just for context as well, guys, the man behind me, Coutinho, Emi Buendia, we're going to put those in the more forward-orientated players bracket when we're talking about it, just because the fact that we played 9s and 10s every so often, and it was an incongruent type of what's the word I'm looking for? We didn't have stability from that type of formation. So we're going to stick with the guys who predominantly played 6s and 8s, and yeah, I think it was very samey. Then you had guys who came on through the course of the year, like Carney Chukwuemeka, kind of got more and more minutes as the year went on. Then there was a lull period in the middle when he didn't, and then towards the end of the season he did. And obviously, young Tim broke his way into the proceedings again. I think if Steven Gerrard had his time back or had this season back again, I think he would have probably plumped up and paid an extra few pounds for a dedicated number 6 in January, because I think if he was being honest with himself, maybe he didn't have the choice though. I'm not saying Steven Gerrard vetoed it or anything. The club may have vetoed it. Johan Lange, it's a transfer committee type thing. But I think if the club were to sit down and do a review, I think they probably would have said, you know what, we should have plumped up for Rodrigo Bentancur, because he went to play socks off for Spurs and was a big reason as to why Spurs were able to command games under Conte and got 4th place. Not saying we would have got 4th place, but Rodrigo Bentancur in that midfield immediately becomes our best midfielder.
Yeah, he dictates the play over at Spurs, doesn't he? If you watch him, he's got something that a lot of our midfield doesn't have consistently, which is press resistance. Anytime he's getting pressed, he's calm under pressure. Doesn't matter whether he's passing 2 yards, 20 yards, further. He's calm in possession, and that's something that I hope that we can get out of our players soon. Whether that's a mentality thing or whether it's just a sheer ability thing, because obviously not everyone has it. Not everyone can do that, and that's not a slight on them because everyone has different strengths. But yeah, Bentancur, I really like the look of him when we were linked to him, and then I think I don't know. There's different reports saying that we were in for him, we weren't in for him, but I'd have took him 100%
for 18 million. It's the signing. It was the signing of the season.
Yeah, it was great.
You know, it really was. Like he completely solidified that Spurs midfield, allowed Spurs to essentially do what they want to most teams, made them a lot more hard to break down and more frustrating. And yeah, look, they got him, we didn't, and I'm not saying that we would have had the same impact on him, but Conte knew how to use him from his time in Italy, and he damn sure knew how to use him when he came to Spurs, because he had good effect. And you know, when we talk about this midfield and I talk about kind of samey players that are all very, very similar, I feel sorry for, there's a lot of midfielders I feel sorry for this season. McGinn, this would be seen as a down year for McGinn. And potentially, like last year was a good year for McGinn, I think. Then the year previously he got injured against Southampton, I think it wasn't it Southampton or Burnley? Can't remember. And then, you know, he missed parts of that year. So he's getting up there in 27, 28 years of age, if I'm not mistaken, for John McGinn. You know, those bad years, if they start to accumulate, not bad years, but those years where maybe he's misused, if they start to accumulate, you know, I'm sure he wants to push on, and he's a good enough player to push on, and we all think he is. Yes, he did miss that header just now, and Scotland played abysmally, but John McGinn is a catalyst type player, and I would say you'd have to walk a long road and find the darkest of dark nights to find somebody who says a bad word about John McGinn that's played with him. I feel sorry for players like him. I feel sorry for Morgan Sanson and his injuries and the fact that he's probably missed his chance of playing in the Premier League now, based on his age.
Yeah, he's. I liked it, what I saw of him quite often. There was that game against Chelsea in the Cup at the start of the season. And before he got injured, he was probably one of the best, if not the best player on the pitch at the time. He looked like he was driven. He was carrying the ball. He was winning the ball, passing the ball really well. It looked, I mean, when we signed him, it looked like great business. Was it something like 15, 16 million in the January window? It was it looked like a good bargain. And as I say, I did like the look of him, but it's one of those that's been hampered by injuries now and again. And I think that might play a part in the fact that he just struggles to get into the team. And then you look at the fact that Jacob Ramsey's come in this season, seized his chance, and he looks like he's going to be a hell of a player. So it doesn't get any easier for Sanson to get in that team.
It doesn't because John McGinn is there. Like, it doesn't because John McGinn is there, because Douglas Luiz is there. And as I say, that's where the samey type players. So there is going to have to be a fall guy. There's going to have to be someone that's going to be stripped out. Like, you hear about Roma wanting to sign Douglas Luiz for 30 million. I don't know if 30 million would entice me to sign. It would entice me to sell him. it would be very dependent on where he was going. I think I'd be okay with letting him go to the Italian league for 30 million like that. But then again, Roma are looking to buy, are apparently in to buy Bissouma, and they've got now an elevated status that they've won their first European competition. Obviously, they've got Mourinho, so whatever pull Steven Gerrard has, I'd say multiply it by 10, and you're going to have Mourinho for the short-term benefits that he can give players as well. So I don't know, but the fall guy, I think the obvious fall guy, I think, is going to be Morgan Sanson. And if we were to, now that we've got Kamara in there, it pushes Douglas Luiz up into that position of the same Z players of having all those eights that can do the same thing. And then if Sanson goes out, do we really lose much if Sanson goes and we maybe bring in another hybrid 6'8" type player? I've just been watching Argentina, and as I said earlier on, like give me Guido Rodriguez all day long. I just like literally he's only short of bringing a gun on the field. Like that's the type of player he is. He's no nonsense, and I would love him in there. But like that's just once again glass slippers on again. That's complete hypothetical stuff. But I do think we will sign more midfielders. I think we've got one more midfielder at least.
I agree.
And then if you think that outgoings are going to be Tim Iroegbunam, I would imagine everybody just says he's nailed on to go to Norwich for next season on loan. Like it just feels right, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I think it does actually. You know, Dino, he likes giving the youth a chance. He gave Carney and JPB a chance at the end of last season. There's obviously that connection with the club and Dean. Norwich are a team that like to play football on the ground, which suits Tim. I mean, I wrote that piece on Tim a couple of months ago. He really impresses me on the ball as well as winning the ball back. So at the age of 18, 19, he's going to be a hell of a player. I think, as you say, with Kamara coming in as well now, he's going to start every game, providing he's obviously fit all season, which, you know, don't want to jinx that at all or anything. But you'd think that getting Tim some development time, Championship would be perfect.
I think it'd be a super move for him.
Yeah. So we'll see what comes of that. And then I think there will be one, maybe two outgoings in terms of 8, depending on who we bring in. Again, we don't. I've got my favourites who I'd like us to bring in, but that's just speculation again.
One person we have actually been linked with. I'd like to get your opinion on him. And it's okay to go in 2-footed as well if you want on this one. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain has been mentioned for anywhere between 8 and 10 million. I genuinely believe he's one of the forgotten men of English football.
Yeah, I agree. Another Liverpool player that's struggled with injuries, and not just at Liverpool, he struggled at Arsenal as well. But he's got something different about him. He's box to box. He can win the ball back. He can carry the ball. Can get a good goal. Got a good shot on him. I like him. I think he's still underrated. I mean, I'm not sure how old he is now. He's probably
28.
Like I was going to say,
28.
Late 20s. So I mean, he's still in his prime years. A Liverpool connection again. I think I would take him at Villa, especially for the price. I'd have preferences first, but I wouldn't turn my nose up at the Ox.
If you were to offer me Jesse Lingard on a free or Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain for 10 million, I'd take Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain for 10 million.
Me too.
But then again, I just like myself and Paddy have a podcast coming out about the 10 greatest wankers in the Premier League. And so keep an eye out for that. When news gets slow, we're going to drop that one. And spoiler alert, Jesse Lingard is going to be on my list for some strange reason. I just have an irrational. I just don't like him. And that's okay too, I suppose. I don't dislike, I prefer not to have him on my team, is essentially what I'm saying.
I think it's when he danced on us at Villa Park last season when they beat us 3-1. That still irritates me a bit.
That comes up. That comes up from time to time in the podcast too, as well. It's pre-recorded, so it's ready to go when things get a bit quieter. So watch out for that one. But no, look, I'm not saying that we will sign Oxlade-Chamberlain. I'm not saying, as you said, that you've got preferences. You've got a list of preferences, but I could see where he could fit into this team. And just remember as well that, like, if he was to take minutes from, if he was to take over from Morgan Sanson and be on the bench and obviously be more available than Sanson was at times this year, I think he's an upgrade on what Morgan Sanson brings, albeit a slightly different player from him. The fact that he is more progressive, he is more of a passer, he's more of a forward. He was, well, that's unfair to say about Morgan Sanson, because when he came into this team, he was probably everything Oxlade-Chamberlain was with Liverpool and more. It's just when he came to the Premier League, he's been utilised back further. So he probably suffers from John McGinn-itis as well, about being used in the wrong position, Sanson. But I just can't see him being here next season. I think that there will be somebody that will drop out of that midfield. And to me, he's the likely candidate, but you never know. You never know. Anyone else in midfield that we forgot to speak about? I think some of the up and coming, some of the good positive points, I think, from midfield, obviously, as you mentioned, young players, young Tim, Kenny Chukwuemeka, Tommy O'Reilly making the bench a couple of times. Yeah. Tommy O'Reilly must be Irish. There must be an Irish connection or something.
Yeah, looks good though. Wonderful left foot from what I've seen of him.
Yeah, I haven't seen much. I will be honest with you. I haven't watched as much as the kids this year as I did the year previous. But Stephen Gerrard seems to think that the sun shines out of him in certain parts. So he's another guy I think we could see in maybe the Cameron Archer mold, that all of a sudden gets a loan move to or maybe gets seen in preseason, and then gets a loan move in and around the league after the first League Cup game. Maybe gets a loan move to a League One side, and then we see how he does, because I think that he could be somebody that could rock up maybe at somewhere that Stephen Gerrard has a connection, or there's somebody coaching that maybe has a connection with him, like Cameron Archer did this season with Ryan Lowe at Preston North End. I'm trying to think, was there any other midfielders we went through this season?
No, I don't think so.
Ashley Young, we might as well talk about Ashley. Apparently, we can't talk about any position group without talking about Ashley Young. No, let's not, because he was a left back predominantly this season, so we won't put him in there, that central midfield position. But I think, look, there's I think it's a position for me. And you can let me know whether you agree with this or not, but I think it's a position for me that took a lot of slack last season. I think the individual players are better than the sum of their parts were over the course of this season. I think the positives have real great potential in the two young guys and Jacob Ramsey that have come in. Like, Jacob Ramsey is now training with the England senior team.
It's crazy.
That's our Jacob Ramsey, guys. That's our Jacob Ramsey.
Yeah, he's what I'd like to see more of in Ramsey next season. Now we've got Kamara, and he's getting further forward a bit now, because obviously him and McGinn filling in for fullbacks to get the ball forward. When the ball goes forward fast, there's no time for him to get into the box, which is where I want to see Ramsey making those late runs in, or even just on the edge of the box, because we've seen the shot he's got on him. But now with Kamara in, I feel like we'll be building with a back three. So those 2-8s can sit a bit further forward and collect the ball, and then obviously the 2-10s can occupy the centre backs and stuff. I don't want to get too into it, because I'm not a tactical genius, but it's what I imagine seeing, and I'd like to see more of JJ, McGinn, whoever else might get in a bit further forward.
Sai actually brings up a player as well. We forgot to mention Hayden Lindley. I think he's probably. I think at the senior level, he's probably going to be pushed back into a full back position, maybe a right back position or something like that. But tough tackling, like in our run in the Youth Cup, there wasn't much getting past him at that number 6 position, and he looked quite imposing. I just don't know, does he have the frame to put on extra muscle or to grow taller? But really interesting player. Also, Sai mentions we like to see how much Stephen Gerrard likes Finn Azaz. Spoiler alert, guys, next week we have a full week of interviews with podcasts for teams of players that were on loan. So watch out for that. They're pre-recorded podcasts. I will be releasing them all next week. It was one of the most enjoyable things I've done since I've started podcasting, talking to guys from Newport County, from Swindon, from Norwich, from Preston. Just a plethora of really cool people and really good guys, and guys that know their football and spoke really highly about Aston Villa players. So have a look out for those. I implore you all to watch them, to like them, and to encourage other people to subscribe to the podcast on the back of them being shown. So it's really good. So he's as I say, he's somebody that maybe wants to look at, considering he won League Two young player of the year
Yeah, good.
season just gone. So yeah, I don't want to spoil too much because I will start talking about Finn Azaz and give away half the podcast that I did with the wonderful guys at the 1912 Exiles podcast. But yeah, so I think realistic with midfield, as we said, James, or as I said, because I feel like I've done a lot of talking on, is too much because I said I wouldn't do any at the start. What's new with me? But I think we'll probably give them a C-. I think over the course of the year.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
What would be your final thoughts on midfield and where, I suppose, final comments on it?
I want it to be less lightweight next season. Capable on the ball. I hate the times in midfield where we play a blind pass across midfield and it gets cut out. I want focus, consistency, physicality, and to be further up the pitch. Have a bit of chemistry between each midfielder that's on it. Make those triangles. I want it to be exciting because midfield's probably my favourite position in football. I think you see all parts of the game going through it, especially the 6 role now, dictating play. I'm really excited about Kamara. So I think I'm past last season's midfield now. Looking forwards, I am excited about it, especially with potential new midfielders on the horizon as well as Kamara. So yeah, onwards and upwards, I think.
I've got this an interesting one from David Kirkland, and it's actually something that I meant to throw out in my preamble, is that when we're talking about players coming in and coming out, and there's a reason I didn't actually even mention him, and I was mentioning about getting Guido Rodriguez in but I think that there's a possibility this could happen. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm not saying I want it to happen, but David Kirkland here says Nakamba and us possibly selling him as he only has a year left in his contract. Was pivotal for us this year. When he played, we played a bit better. He brought a bit more structure to the team, and he brought that stay-at-home ability that Douglas Luiz didn't really.
Yeah.
Through no fault of his own, because I just think that Stephen Gerrard actually played a different midfield without Nakamba in it, with Nakamba in it. But potentially, if you were to upgrade on him, I think he could be sold while his stock is high. Not saying I want it. I'm not saying that he deserves to be sold, but we're going to have to balance the books somewhere.
I think there is potential to it.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting one, and I'm because I completely forgot to talk about him that much, and it was because I wanted to bring up this point about potentially he could be one of the odd men out if we were to upgrade in that position. So thanks, David Kirkland, for reminding me, albeit that you didn't know you had to remind me about that. So that was interesting. So I think that's really kind of going to do it for us tonight, James. Midfield, as he says, an area that we must do better, I think is what will be on the report card as it goes home, as we say. But I want to thank you so much for popping on again. Really appreciate your time. 15 minutes, the 20 minutes turned into 47 minutes. I know not a lot of people have that time. Paddy's just a nut job who refuses to tell me to shut the fuck up whenever I'm on podcast. And it seems like I found someone else who refuses to tell me to shut up too.
I don't mind. I can talk about it forever. So
excellent. I really appreciate your time, especially on a school night here on Wednesday, the 1st of June. But I really appreciate it, and I'd love to have you back on again because you've given some great insights on the midfield. So as I say, everybody follow James as James. You're at the Holt 1874.
Yeah.
At the Holt 1874 is where you'll find James, and please give him a follow. And as I say, I think we'll be seeing on the podcast because I enjoy talking to you, James. To everybody out there, thanks a million for all your support. We've had like 150 people, I think, at one stage, or 160 people watching our little old podcast today as we rambled about Mike Beale, as we rambled about potentials and this and that, and then got into midfield talk. So I really appreciate it. Thumbs up on the podcast if you enjoy it. That really, really helps us, does us a solid. Also, if you could subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, I would really appreciate that too. We have a massive amount of podcasts coming out I've been recording podcasts like this weekend to give you an insight. I've spoken to an Irish man who writes solely on French football to talk about specifically about Boubacar Kamara. That will be out over the weekend. Next week we've got Loan Watch for the whole week with some amazing podcasts. I'm going to load them all up onto YouTube tomorrow, so you guys can set the reminders for them if you want to watch them. Genuinely, if you never watch any of our podcasts again, you should really watch those loan podcasts, because the guys give such great insights about these players, and they've seen them play week in, week out, and they're very, very interesting podcasts as well. So I would like that. Tomorrow we will be back I will be back again tomorrow. We'll be back at 9:30 for another live podcast. Again, I might be doing it from my kitchen as opposed to my podcast boudoir that I'm in here, but I will be joined with by the guys from the wonderful A View from the Stands podcast as well. So I hope to see you there tomorrow. And get subscribing to the podcast, as I say, because I'm really, really excited about what we have coming up over the next few weeks. And it's something that we've been working towards over pretty much the whole season, to get stuff like this together. So lastly, once again, James, I want to say thank you to you for popping on. Really means an awful lot, and I really appreciate your time. And to everybody out there, have a fantastic evening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and all that's left to say is up the Villa.
Up the Villa.